What were the discussions in terms of, someone's like, cool, I'm on, we all agree we should be doing this, but in terms of, okay, where do we begin? How do we even do this?
Yeah, so it was daunting to figure it all out. Uh, but again, in Colombia, there was so much information. People, people just kind of, there were so many examples for us, like uh, that. We we kind of had sort of a roadmap almost the entire time. Um, but when the guerrillas contacted us, it wasn't just like, hey, uh, you need to get in touch with us. I mean, they gave us a very detailed mechanism to do it. I mean, they broke it down. They gave us code names. We had codes for my dad, codes for millions of dollars, codes for proof of life. And then we had radio frequencies, and they basically instructed us to get a radio. Um, and here's the primary frequency, and here's alternate, A, B, C, and D. And we're going to speak twice a week at 7 p.m. on Tuesday and Thursday. And that's how it's going to go. So, and then they gave us a date, which was maybe 5 or 6 days away from when we first got the demand. And that was, it's like, okay, well, how are we going to get a radio? But our neighbors, this German family that lived next door, who feature prominently in the film, I'm not sure how the husband Uli figured it out, but he found this guy whose family had been through a kidnapping, and they had to get a radio and in order to resolve it. And then when it was resolved, he, as a public service, would donate his radio and this antenna, which was like a 25, 30-foot antenna, um, to other kidnapped families. And then, we, like in our case, we used it and then gave it back to him. And I hope it helped another family or two or three afterwards, so it was just like everything. Like it seems so daunting on the whole, but it's like within 5 days you got to get a radio. Well, that's our, we figured it out. We got a radio, and then I think the biggest thing was just figuring out who the group was going to be. Like, how we were going to talk to these people, because it wasn't going to be me or my brother or my mom. Our Spanish wasn't good enough. And it's highly recommended that, you get somebody who's a native speaker. If the company had been dealing with it, they would typically maybe use their lawyer. That's a perfect person to do negotiations. But we were really truly on our own and had to figure out, I mean, who could we trust? And my best friend, Robert, who I met on my first day of school, he was always over. He was always over before my dad was kidnapped. He loved my dad. My dad loved him. He wanted to help in any way he could. He was a native speaker. And we just, as a group, we being my family and the neighbors next door, this German family that lived everything with us, we were like, came to a group consensus that Robert would be the best person. And I don't know what we were thinking, but because he was so young. But
How old was he at the time?
well, he was probably 22 or
Yeah.
23, which there's plenty of people that accomplish amazing things at 23 years old, but he was still a kid. I mean, as was I, and I mean, even though I was 21 through 22 while it happened, I mean, I didn't feel like a kid at the time, but I know now, enough times passed, I was a kid still, and Robert was too. It didn't seem, at that age, you feel invincible and that you can do anything. And as somebody who's a little older now, I don't know. I mean, had it happened today, if I would trust, a 22, 23-year-old with the negotiation of my father.
As all this is happening, as Robert ends up being like appointed the spokesperson for the family in a way, like is everyone kind of on the same page with these decisions, or is there someone who's kind of leading the charge, or is it really a group effort?
Well, I mean, it's a mixture of both. I mean, but there was clearly nobody who was the leader more than my mom. she just wouldn't take no for an answer. So was just constantly trying to find other solutions, thinking outside of the box. But she didn't. It wasn't a dictatorship. She needed a sounding board, and that was us and our neighbors and Robert. Uh, and she was very democratic in that regard. She wanted to hear what everybody had to say, and so she led the way, but she very much included the entire group, and that included kids like myself, or even our neighbors' kids who were 14 and 12 at the time, or maybe it was 15 and 12. Anyway, young, and didn't just dismiss their opinions about doing everything. So she led it, but it was a group, very much a group.